Mr. Chairman.
Well, you know what? If he were part of the Epstein investigation, you wouldn't do anything about it.
Online chat rooms and committed sextortion. Yet he didn't even know in your tiny little district.
Today, we witnessed a tense moment in Congress as Representative Jamie Raskin confronted Attorney General Pam Bondi. In a forceful statement, Raskin accused the Department of Justice of failing victims and eroding public trust. He pressed Bondi on how the DOJ handled the Jeffrey Epstein case, questioning whether survivors truly received justice. He also highlighted investigations tied to the Minneapolis shooting, raising concerns about fairness and impartiality. Raskin didn't hold back, suggesting that political motivations within the department may be influencing decisions. He alleged cover-ups, selective enforcement, and a disturbing pattern of protecting powerful individuals while leaving survivors with no answers. This exchange shines a light on the deep partisan tensions surrounding transparency and accountability in our federal law enforcement agencies. It raises an important question. Are the people who are supposed to uphold justice actually doing so, or are some allowed to operate above the law? As this hearing unfolds, one thing is clear. The stakes are high, and the eyes of the public are watching closely. Representative Raskin's questions cut to the heart of a growing public concern: accountability in the highest levels of government. He emphasized that when survivors are ignored and powerful figures are shielded, faith in our justice system erodes. Bondi, on the other hand, defended the department's actions, insisting that decisions were made with care and within the bounds of the law, but Raskin pushed back, pointing out inconsistencies and demanding answers for those who have long been denied them. The exchange wasn't just about one case or one department. It was about the principle that no one should be above the law. It highlighted the challenges of maintaining transparency in politically sensitive investigations and the need for a system that serves justice, not political interests. As the hearing concluded, the tension in the room was palpable. For many watching, it was a stark reminder that oversight and accountability are not optional. They are essential. In the end, the questions raised by Raskin echo far beyond the walls of Congress. They remind us all that protecting victims, upholding the law, and maintaining public trust are responsibilities that cannot be ignored. And for the DOJ, the message is clear: the public is watching, and justice must be served. Raskin's rebuke of Bondi also brought attention to the broader culture within the Department of Justice. He questioned whether political considerations are influencing prosecutions, investigations, and the way sensitive cases are handled. According to Raskin, this pattern of selective enforcement not only harms victims but also damages the credibility of federal law enforcement agencies across the nation. He argued that when decisions appear to favor the powerful and ignore those most in need of protection, it sends a troubling message about who truly benefits from the justice system. For survivors of abuse or victims of high-profile crimes, the impact is profound. Their trust in the system is shaken, and justice feels out of reach. The hearing also underscored the partisan divide over transparency and accountability. Raskin's pointed questions revealed the tension between political loyalty and the ethical duty to uphold the law impartially. He made it clear that protecting the public and ensuring justice must come before politics or personal interests. As the session went on, the exchange between Raskin and Bondi highlighted a critical question for all Americans. Can we rely on institutions meant to protect us when those in power seem shielded from scrutiny? It's a debate that goes beyond one case, one department, or one hearing. It's about the integrity of our entire justice system. Raskin also highlighted the human cost of these alleged failures. He spoke of survivors waiting for answers, families seeking accountability, and communities looking for reassurance that the law applies equally to everyone. According to him, when justice is delayed or denied, it is not just individual cases that suffer, it is public trust in the entire system. He pressed on, emphasizing that transparency is not optional in a democracy. Every decision, every action taken or not taken by the Department of Justice affects the confidence citizens have in their government. The hearing made clear that when powerful figures are shielded while ordinary citizens face the full force of the law, the imbalance becomes undeniable. In his closing points, Raskin called for stronger oversight, clear accountability measures, and a renewed commitment to serving the victims first. He reminded the Department of Justice that its role is not to protect the powerful or to serve political interests, but to uphold justice for all. The exchange between Raskin and Bondi left a lasting impression, underlining the tension between political influence and legal responsibility, and raising urgent questions about whether our federal institutions can truly be trusted to act impartially in the most sensitive cases. Throughout the hearing, Raskin's questions highlighted not only specific cases, but also systemic issues within the Department of Justice. He raised concerns about internal decision-making processes, the potential for bias, and whether political considerations are influencing which cases are pursued or dismissed. He also underscored the importance of accountability at every level. For Raskin, protecting the integrity of the justice system is about more than resolving individual cases. It is about ensuring that the public can trust the institutions designed to serve them. When powerful figures appear to be shielded and survivors are left with unanswered questions, that trust is compromised. The exchange served as a stark reminder that oversight, transparency, and impartiality are critical to the functioning of a democratic system. Raskin's forceful remarks were not just a critique of past actions, they were a call to action, urging the Department of Justice to recommit to its core mission, serving justice, protecting victims, and maintaining public confidence in the law. The broader implications of the hearing extend far beyond the individuals involved. Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle recognize that public confidence in federal institutions is fragile. Moments like this, where allegations of selective enforcement and political influence are brought into the spotlight, can either restore faith through transparency or deepen skepticism if questions remain unanswered. Raskin suggested that the Department of Justice must take concrete steps to demonstrate independence and fairness. That includes clear communication with the public, consistent application of the law, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. Without those measures, he warned, perceptions of bias will continue to grow. Observers noted that the intensity of the exchange reflects a larger national debate about the role of federal law enforcement in politically sensitive matters. At stake is not just the outcome of any single investigation, but the credibility of the justice system itself. When institutions are perceived as politicized, it becomes increasingly difficult to unify the public around shared principles of fairness and equal treatment under the law. As discussions continue, the pressure on the Department of Justice remains significant. Calls for oversight, transparency, and accountability are unlikely to fade. The hearing made clear that lawmakers intend to keep pressing for answers and that questions surrounding high-profile investigations will remain in the public eye. Several members of the committee echoed the concern that institutional credibility, once damaged, is difficult to restore. They emphasized that transparency must be proactive rather than reactive, especially in cases that carry national attention. According to Raskin, waiting for public pressure to force disclosure only deepens suspicion and fuels division. He also stressed that the rule of law depends on consistency. If similar cases are treated differently depending on the political influence of those involved, the perception of a two-tiered justice system becomes unavoidable. And once that perception takes hold, rebuilding trust becomes an uphill battle. The hearing further exposed how deeply polarized the debate over federal law enforcement has become. Supporters of the department argue that complex investigations often require confidentiality and careful legal strategy. Critics, however, contend that secrecy without sufficient explanation creates room for doubt and undermines accountability. In the end, the exchange underscored a central tension facing modern institutions: how to balance investigative integrity with public transparency. The Department of Justice now faces increasing scrutiny, not only for its past decisions, but for how it chooses to move forward. Lawmakers made it clear that oversight will continue and that the demand for answers, particularly in politically sensitive cases, will not simply fade with the news cycle. What remains to be seen is whether these hearings will lead to structural reforms or simply become another chapter in an ongoing partisan struggle. But one thing is certain: debates over accountability, fairness, and equal justice under the law are far from over. In the days following the hearing, political analysts suggested that moments like this often shape the broader narrative around federal accountability. Public hearings are not only about extracting answers in real time, they are also about signaling priorities, drawing lines, and defining what lawmakers believe is at stake. Raskin's line of questioning signaled that, for many critics, the central issue is credibility. If the Department of Justice is to function effectively, it must be perceived as independent from political pressure. That perception, he argued, is just as important as the legal outcomes themselves. A decision may be lawful, but if it appears selective or politically convenient, public confidence can still erode. At the same time, defenders of the department caution against oversimplifying complex investigations. They argue that high-profile cases often involve sensitive evidence, ongoing legal constraints, and procedural limitations that cannot always be disclosed publicly. The tension between transparency and confidentiality remains one of the most difficult balances for any justice institution to strike. Still, the broader takeaway from the hearing was unmistakable. Scrutiny is intensifying. Lawmakers are signaling that oversight will continue, that questions surrounding politically sensitive cases will persist, and that demands for clearer explanations will only grow louder. Whether this moment marks a turning point or simply reinforces existing divisions remains uncertain. But the conversation sparked by this exchange reflects a larger national debate, one centered on accountability, equal enforcement of the law, and the enduring challenge of maintaining trust in democratic institutions. As the political fallout continues, advocacy groups and legal experts are also weighing in. Some argue that hearings like this are a necessary safeguard, ensuring that federal agencies remain answerable to elected representatives and ultimately to the public. Others warn that increasingly confrontational exchanges risk further politicizing institutions that are meant to operate independently. Raskin made clear that his concerns were not personal, but institutional. In his view, the integrity of the justice system depends on constant oversight and a willingness to confront uncomfortable questions. He emphasized that accountability is not an attack on law enforcement, it is a reinforcement of democratic principles. Meanwhile, the Department of Justice faces a delicate path forward. Any effort to restore confidence will likely require clearer communication, demonstrable consistency in enforcement decisions, and visible steps to ensure independence from political influence. Without that, critics argue, skepticism will only deepen. The hearing ultimately served as a reflection of the broader climate in Washington, marked by distrust, heightened scrutiny, and competing narratives about the role of power and responsibility. Yet beneath the partisan friction lies a shared principle that few publicly dispute: justice must be applied fairly, and no individual or institution should be beyond accountability. As this debate unfolds, the American public remains the ultimate stakeholder. The strength of any justice system rests not only on statutes and procedures, but on the belief that those entrusted with power will exercise it impartially. That belief, once shaken, requires sustained effort to rebuild, and the events of this hearing show that the conversation about trust, transparency, and equal justice is far from finished. In the weeks ahead, the pressure is expected to mount as additional documents, testimonies, and internal reviews come under scrutiny. Lawmakers have indicated that this hearing may be only the beginning of a broader effort to examine how politically sensitive investigations are handled. The possibility of follow-up hearings, formal inquiries, or legislative proposals now looms over the department. For critics, the objective is clear: establish stronger guardrails to prevent any perception of favoritism or selective enforcement. That could include clearer reporting requirements to Congress, stricter transparency standards in high-profile cases, or independent oversight mechanisms designed to insulate investigations from political influence. Supporters of the department, however, caution that reforms must not compromise prosecutorial independence. They argue that too much political oversight risks creating the very problem critics claim to oppose: external pressure shaping investigative decisions. The balance between accountability and independence remains at the heart of the debate. What this hearing ultimately revealed is the fragility of public trust. Institutions rely not only on authority granted by law, but on legitimacy granted by the people. When questions of fairness arise, especially in cases involving powerful individuals, that legitimacy is tested. The conversation sparked by Raskin's confrontation with Bondi is likely to continue well beyond this single session. It reflects a broader national reckoning over how justice is administered, who holds power, and how transparency can be strengthened in an era of intense political polarization. As lawmakers, legal experts, and the public digest what unfolded, one reality stands out: accountability is not a one-time event. It is an ongoing process. And in a democracy, that process depends on vigilance, oversight, and the unwavering principle that the law must apply equally to all.